Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise, wrote Marguerite Annie Johnson, nicknamed Maya by her beloved older brother Bailey. She was born in St. Louis, Missouri on April 4th, 1928, exactly 40 years to the day before Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. At the tender age of 3, Maya's parents split up and she was sent across country alone on a train with her brother Bailey to live with her grandmother in Arkansas. At age 7, Maya was raped by her mother's boyfriend. Jailed for only 1 day, the rapist was murdered right after he got out by Maya's uncles. Maya was scared she'd killed the man by telling her family of the crime, so she didn't talk for the next 5 years. She said, "I thought my voice would kill anyone." She spent those 5 years hiding in libraries. She studied literature of all kinds, memorizing Shakespeare, entire plays of his, and all 50 of his sonnets, as well as poetry by Edgar Allan Poe, Longfellow, Balzac, Kipling, Maupassant, and others. "When I decided to speak," she said, "I had a lot to say, and many ways in which to say what I had to say. I was able to draw from human thought, human disappointment, and triumphs enough to triumph myself." She rose. Eventually, Maya ended up in San Francisco doing stints as a sex worker and as the first Black female streetcar conductor. She gave birth to her son Clyde at the tender age of 16. A few years later, she married Greek electrician, sailor, and aspiring musician Anastasios Angelopoulos. She became a modern dancer and danced with Alvin Ailey and went to New York City to study calypso dancing. Then she began making calypso albums while singing, acting, and dancing professionally. Despite divorcing Angelopoulos after only 3 years of marriage, she was persuaded to change her professional name to Maya Angelou. She toured around Europe, performing in the opera Porgy and Bess, and apparently she taught herself the language of every country she visited. Extraordinary. From there, she began writing freelance articles, became an editor, and was a member of the Harlem Writers Guild. From the late 1950s on, she became a civil rights activist with Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. And she spent time living and working in Egypt and in Ghana. It was her friendship with writer James Baldwin that got her out of her depression when both MLK and Malcolm X were assassinated. In 1969, Baldwin encouraged her to write her first autobiographical memoir, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, which became the first nonfiction international bestseller by an African-American woman. In fact, we have it here in our fellowship's wonderful library. There was no stopping Angelou after that. She proceeded to write plays and films, as well as 7 memoirs, countless poems and essays. She composed movie scores and songs and directed and acted in TV, film, and theater internationally. The recipient of several honorary degrees, Maya eventually became a professor and a teacher. Her life was a dizzying, extraordinary journey of perseverance, of creativity, and achievement. To me, Maya Angelou is a luminous example of a woman who persevered against tremendous odds. She rose up again and again and let no one stop her from all she could be. Maya wrote, "All my work, my life, everything I do is about survival. Not just bare, awful, plodding survival, but survival with grace and faith. While one may encounter many defeats, she writes, one must not be defeated. There are so many women throughout history who've encountered defeat, humiliation, abuse, and suffering. Women who've nevertheless risen up to change the course of their lives and those of others around them. Unitarian women like Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Lucy Stone, who worked tirelessly for the right of women to vote and be educated. Raised in the early 1800s, these women encountered all kinds of roadblocks, but they never gave up. Together, they campaigned for equal rights, for abolition, and the right for women to vote and for African Americans to vote. They had to struggle against tremendous barriers to get their message out because, get this, women were forbidden from speaking publicly. Anthony wrote, "No advanced step taken by women has been so bitterly contested as that of speaking in public. For nothing which they have attempted, not even to secure the suffrage, have they been so abused, condemned, and antagonized." Eventually, Susan B. Anthony found a way to give around 75 to 100 speeches a year to get her message out. Risking arrest, she spoke from the top of billiard tables or bandstands, and later in large halls. Lucy Stone also became a prominent orator, bringing many new women into the suffragist and abolitionist cause. Stone was also the first woman from Massachusetts to earn a college degree and to keep her maiden name in marriage. In 1872, Susan B. Anthony was arrested in her hometown of Rochester, New York, for, get this, do you know? Voting. In fact, it took another 50 years of struggle and commitment to the cause before women officially got the vote. Now, it's easy to take for granted the rights that others fought so hard for. I'm reminded when I research great women like this, how fortunate I am to be able to speak publicly, to get a great education, and to vote. And it's all thanks to the trailblazing perseverance and determination of these women. They persisted. They swam against the tide. They persevered in their belief that their cause was just. And eventually the arc of the universe did bend toward the justice they sought. They didn't give up. Despite the ridicule, the ostracization, and the threat and the reality of violence throughout most of their lives, they persevered in their fight for the abolition of slavery and the emancipation of women, and eventually won. Preparing this sermon reminded me that the struggle for justice, equality, and freedom has been part of our human history forever. There have been times, particularly in this past year, when things in our nation have felt deeply unjust, destructive, and oppressive. And it seems like there's been a daily attack on our dearly held First Unitarian Universalist principle of the inherent worth and dignity of all. But the history of these courageous women is teaching me that even when times seem difficult and unjust. We must persevere. Eventually, injustice will be righted. Wrong will become right. It may take great struggles and tragedy. But I believe humanity is evolving towards a more equal and peaceful place. It may feel like one step forward and two steps back, but it will get better. It's worth hanging in there. It's worth persevering. It's worth rising again and again for change, for hope, for a brighter future for all. I refuse to give up envisioning and working for a better world. Are you with me? Yes. Because that's what our ancestors have taught us. We need to keep going again and again. And as I watch our younger generations coming forward and speaking out about the injustices they are seeing in our world today, I want to say, don't give up. Don't give up. Hold on to your grit and determination. And if you don't give up, eventually things will change. I don't know how many of you saw the impassioned speech by Emma Gonzalez from the Parkland school shooting, which went viral. This passionate, articulate 17-year-old girl was calling BS on people in government who do nothing to stop the easy availability of guns and the loss of children's lives. She called BS on more thoughts and prayers without action. Emma and the brave kids who are organizing now are already suffering ridicule and dismissal at the hands of the NRA supporters and the voices of the powerful. But these young people continue to stand up to those who would silence them. And again, I say, don't give up. We're mobilizing to support you. Persevere and remember the brave, relentless people whose shoulders we stand on. We will rise up again and again. We often talk about great public heroes, inspirational men like Martin Luther King Jr. or Nelson Mandela or Mahatma Gandhi, who are all shining examples of perseverance and the virtues we aspire to. But often missing from that appreciation are our heroines, our female heroes. We all too often neglect to hold up the extraordinary and ordinary acts of perseverance and courage by countless women. Women like Joan of Arc battling for France against English domination, or Florence Nightingale establishing the profession of nursing. Unitarian and Universalist women like Clara Barton, who started the Red Cross while working on the battlefield. Or Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, an African-American Unitarian activist in the 19th century, a writer, suffragist, and worker on the Underground Railroad. Or Olympia Brown, the first ordained female Universalist minister, or Unitarian and Transcendentalist Margaret Fuller, who wrote the first work on gender equality called Woman in the 19th century. We have a rich legacy of courageous Unitarian and Universalist women role models upon whose shoulders we stand, women and men alike. Recently, my husband Michael and I saw the movie Battle of the Sexes, starring Emma Stone and Steve Carell. Who's seen that movie? It was a fantastic film, and I encourage you to rent it. As many of you know, it was inspired by tennis player Billie Jean King, her relentless advocacy for equal pay for equal work, something we still have yet to achieve. Women still only make about 80 cents on the dollar of men's pay. And that percentage is significantly worse for Black and Latina women. That pay disparity, coupled with the increasing evidence in the Me Too movement of sexual harassment in the workplace, means we still have a long way to go. A long way to go before women are treated equally, paid equally, and are given equal respect in this country. And these are just the women that somehow miraculously made the history books or those that made it into the news. There are also extraordinary, unsung, heroic women who get up day in and day out to care for their children with a disability, or who care for their spouses or parents with long-term illnesses, sometimes for decades or more. These are the women who persevere with love and courage. Not because anyone is applauding or recognizing them, let alone paying them, but because that is who they are. They are women of tremendous integrity, generosity, and resilience. And there are women like that among us here today. I see you. I see you out there smiling, showing up again and again. I see some of you perhaps feeling a little reserved about all you do. But I see you. I see women who I admire immensely for their deep reserves of love and persistence. I see women who get up every day to help others, who overcome great battles. Women who have difficult stories of abuse or loss or illness, who find a way to go on nevertheless and to remake their lives. I see women who show grace in the face of hardship, strength in the face of adversity, and courage in the face of difficulty. I see women who inspire me just by being who they are every day. You teach me. I see you. You women inspire me because there have been many times that I felt beaten down. Beaten by the system, beaten by bullying, beaten by misogyny, beaten by inappropriate advances, beaten by harsh words and cruel actions, beaten by pressure, by judgment, by cold-heartedness, beaten by stories of not being good enough, beaten by denigration for being a woman, beaten. But what you and these extraordinary and ordinary women's stories teach me is that when they try to keep you down, when they beat you or abuse you, when they judge you or make you small, when they do all they can in their power to cut you down and destroy you, you can rise. Still, you rise. I have seen you do it, despite it all. You can find your voice. You can find your power. You can find your allies and supporters. You can find your courage. You can find your compassion, your strong and generous heart. You can rise. You can rise by being true to who you are. You can rise by saying no to that faltering inner voice that would relinquish power to those outside of you. You can rise by trusting that life wants you to be whole. You can rise by listening to your higher inner wisdom that tells you you matter. You matter. You can rise. I can rise. We can rise. We can rise to be all only we can be, to be our whole, magnificent, glorious selves we were born to be. So I want to close by singing you a song I wrote when I first started to inhabit my wholeness as a woman. A song that emerged when I began to realize that being a woman is a powerful, beautiful thing. It's not about being weak or meek or deferent or second class or just about looks or niceness. Being a woman is a gift because we were birthed by generations of tenacious, brave women. Women who know what it is to feel pain, who know what it is to persevere through adversity, who know what it is to celebrate life. This is the song about the glory of being a woman. And I dedicate it to all the women here who inspire me and the people who support us in our fullness.